I had 2 cranial aneurysms, and they literally had to take the top of my head off. I mean, they take a saw.
The family is speaking out at the site in Brooklyn where their daughter was shot and killed. Now, it happened while she attended a vigil for a friend who was killed the night before.
I mean, they take a saw and they cut your head off and go in to find the artery that is, one was leaking, the other that hadn't before it burst.
Imagine had the tobacco industry been immune to prostitute being sued. Come on. Awesome.
And I'm happy to take questions if that's what I'm supposed to do, Nance, whatever you want me to do. Thank you for your tolerance, for listening to me.
Race war. Whose team are you on? Black people or white people?
Is there a race war? Did I miss it?
The white people. The white people.
And the mayor is likening this commission to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that we saw in South Africa.
In recent weeks, South Africa has seen some of its worst violence since the apartheid era.
Solving the problem of structural institutional racism is our recovery.
A Brooklyn man could now face upgraded charges. The city's medical examiner has ruled the death of a 4-month-old girl a homicide. The mother of Royalty Camp says her boyfriend, Ricardo Price, beat her daughter while he was babysitting her. She says it happened after the infant interrupted Price when he was playing video games.
It is the only pathway to our recovery. We can't be whole if we don't eradicate the cancer of racism.
So after about 16 years of being tortured by these people, they had a wrongful death in their family, got a $10 million award. And the first thing they did with their money after they bought a Lincoln was to come after me and hire attorneys with the condo board to figure out a way to create arrears and $26,000 to have the owner of the apartment kick me out. All because of these videos that I shot. And the only reason I put them up was because, I mean, you can see.
How does it affect you? Are the prostitutes, are they committing crimes against you? Probably not. Okay? All the things that you have problems with, where people park, where the firemen park, all these things, ignore them for 30 days.
Where the firemen park? What are you talking about?
One of your videos I watched a couple of years ago was about when the firemen were up there for a fire call, and you started asking them, why do they have to park in these spaces and block these spaces?
That's not what it was. You misunderstood that.
I don't care. It doesn't matter.
But it does.
But it doesn't matter. No, I just brought that up, but it doesn't matter right now.
We have to support the sex workers. We have to do something different. The conception we have in our legal system is broken. We need to change it.
Imagine had the tobacco industry been immune to prostitute being sued. Come on.
Awesome.
Let me call the cops. If you want to go online and post stuff, that's called cyberbullying.
Oh my God.
Now you are being the bully because now you're posting stuff derogatory about somebody that you're having.
Like I said, recording everything. I got my neighbors as proof. Let's see.
When the men got tired of being rejected, when they would hit on me for years, they finally started saying things like, "You have sex with your dog," amongst other things.
You sleep with your dog. Like, you sleep with your dog. Like,
you know, we're here investigating because we have to, but do you know what I mean? There's much more critical things we need to be doing.
Now you're going to shut up and you're listening. All right? You have been told it's a civil matter. Okay? They don't make the fines. The people who run this complex make the fines. Okay? They're responsible for fining and not fining people. If they find that you're in violation, you get fined. If you have a problem with that, you take it up in small claims court with the building, not individual people who live in here. Okay? That's where you're wrong. Now, if you take it and file a claim against Hillcrest Park management,
He wasn't on the management when
it
it started.
had nothing to do with management. He's a board member. He's elected by the people who live here.
The board told us to write a letter. We wrote a letter. If you were to ask, let's just say the Peekskill Police Department to reference that license plate number back to a Chevy Tahoe. It would go back to 2014 when they were making daily deliveries to my front door, and I wasn't as concerned about them as much as the people they were delivering to who were threatening to kill me. Even when the Reeves moved, they owned the apartment across the hall, so they rented to another woman who killed her own baby, who 27 years before, but who is in the recording saying, "I'll beat her ass, I'll push her down the stairs. She knocks on my door." Because they were laughing that I had come to Glynis's door asking for help because Daniel had threatened to push me down the stairs. And they thought that was funny. But her son was also arrested. You know, that's someone that never gave me a hard time personally, so it's not like I want to get into it with every single person, but they were threatening me. Like, the mother was threatening me, and the son is a heroin dealer. I mean, it's in the newspaper, it's on the TV. Preet Bharara, the SDNY, which is, I guess, the FBI and Department of Justice. These people were on their radar, and everybody's laughing at me and not doing anything about anything and kicking me out of my home. Yeah, let's talk about police reform.
Only delusional people stand at their windows and doorways and record everything.
You mean prostitutes and people who
you
threaten
record
violence?
everything.
Yeah, I do.
You've got nothing else to do.
I just want to point out that this woman, who I had never seen before, I heard her voice and barely saw her face, but they took her out like this unconscious. I don't know that she's even still alive.
Recording everything. I got my neighbors as proof. Let's see.
Even the cop that came to the door said, she needs to be put away. She needs to be Yeah, she does. I'm like, but you know what? If she was there, I wouldn't care. But she sat up there and said, I heard you out here laughing and giggling. And somebody said, sorry.
And the police just basically laughed at me. Some of them went to high school with these people. Peekskill is a weird place and needs its own little documentary. Professionally done. Not my little SOS smoke signals.
Yes?
There was an officer just up here. Not sure, I didn't catch his name.
Okay. How can I help you?
Because we're going to bestow some honors on some well-known citizens.
You don't want me to sue you for your little Honda and your little condo. Don't mess with me.
You mean you and your $10 million money?
That.
Yeah, that's what you're gonna do with it?
I have a top 8 lawyer. That.
Yeah, that's what you're gonna do with it?
I have a top 8 lawyer that will chew you apart. Okay? Ugly.
Wow.
Okay? Ugly. Okay? Ugly.
Wow.
Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
What do you think about this curfew tonight?
Close
Go
upstairs.
They're thieves.
What's going on?
Call the cops. They're trying to steal a car.
This is my car.
Inside is his car. Yeah, he is their car. No, this is my car.
Shut it!
Oh my God! She's stealing their car. He's still in the car. Yeah, he told the cop. Call the cop. Call the cop. It's been called. It's been called. It's been called. It's been called. They stole the car. These girls stole the car. Hey, come out. They stole the car. They stole the car. These girls.
Notice how the soldiers go to the girls out of the car, make sure they're okay. But not one person checks on the man who had his car stolen. Just lying there like that. I mean, even if he was obviously dead to them, someone could have comforted him in his last moments. But that's not the society we live in.
Yeah, hey, back up.
So the guy dies on the sidewalk, and here this lady comes out.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice. Because of you, and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice.
Should we have dispensed the trials? You're not going to have a trial. Yeah. Let's just convict him right now. Yeah.
There shouldn't even be a trial. He should be convicted just as is.
Not really worried. Too much thinking. I did not good for the brain. Because I'm crazy. It's not check nothing.
In the novel 1984.
Was she mistaken? I mean, why is everyone so sure she wasn't being serious? I mean, notice how it goes over everyone's head.
So the United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. And it is an alliance that is strong and enduring.
In the novel 1984.
It won't work. The city won't work, the country won't work. And this is the moment, that blessed transformational moment. We don't get many of these in our lives, but this is that moment.
In the novel 1984.
Above all, to be there with you. To parents of transgender children, affirming your child's identity is one of the most powerful things you can do to keep them safe and healthy. To any transgender American who's struggling, please know you're not alone. To parents and children alike, please ask for help. And know this, you're so brave, you belong, and we have your back. God bless you all. Be brave.
In the novel 1984.
You're not going to know that the police officers, and we're going to see if somebody is going to look to harm somebody through hate.
In the novel 1984.
We need to help them. We need to end the criminalization of sex workers and put all of the focus on enforcement against those who subjugate them.
In the novel 1984.
Then you'll call the police, right?
If you wear that, I have been advised to call the police if you do not comply with my rules.
In the novel 1984.
And put them in positions of power, and next thing you know, the country does start to disappear. That is a very frightening prospect.
Thank you. More ignoramus behavior and racist anti-Asian rants in Manhattan. Tonight, video of the suspect. New York cops now trying to identify.
Say that racist again. He's like communist China?
Well, isn't that where you're from?
In the novel 1984. And comparing it to the Ministry of Truth in the novel 1984. Can you clarify what exactly is this? What exactly will this Disinformation Governance Board do? Will it monitor American citizens?
Dan, I'm very pleased to do so.
So I was basically required to delete my criticism of Mayorkas, and then even a tweet where I wrote to the New York Post, Miranda Devine, I think this is the one, about criticizing Mayorkas. Even that one got flagged.
Between the Ukrainian government and the FBI to pressure Twitter to censor from Twitter, from his Substack. There you see the Headline would read, FBI helps Ukraine censor Twitter users and obtain their info, including journalists. And it describes how the FBI and the Ukrainians were pressuring Twitter, giving Twitter lists of people that they wanted censored on the grounds that they were spreading disinformation, meaning they were insufficiently supportive of the Ukrainian narrative, questioning Ukraine's claims about the war itself. And one of the people on the list was Aaron Mate himself, so we're going to try and get him back on in order to speak to us about this reporting and a couple of other articles he published this week. Let's just take a quick...
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free.
Yes.
And we will be.
And the Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent.
Thank you so much.
No, it's...
A small group of people control access to all relevant information, and the rest of us don't know. We're allowed to yap all we want about racism, but go ahead and talk about something that really matters.
It's really, really chilling. And about a half a dozen others also to Stacey Plaskett about Kamala Harris, Max Rose, Austin, General Austin, West Bellamy from Charlottesville, government-related officials, all of them flagged, or I was, put in Twitter jail. Oh, and this one from it was a reply to something Snowden tweeted, indecent or something about nudity. It was like they didn't even have a category. And then just last week, I've been given a week for this tweet. Can you imagine wanting to go along with a plan for 4 years that would lead towards your presidency based on the previous guy dying? I got flagged for that. And if it's because I said what a whore in passing, or I tweeted at this whore that she should be president. I mean, you're having a conversation with other people, and for our government to say, oh, don't you dare call her a whore. And obviously nobody thinks she's a prostitute. This one, I called this man a whore, an applause whore, because he loved, listening to the audience cheer him on. And I just pointed it out. It's with Bill Maher. Does anyone think Bill Maher hasn't used the word whore? And nobody is using it in, calling him a prostitute. It's just, I shouldn't have to explain myself, right? And so to just be cut out of that just 3 days after the new CEO is really disheartening. The idea that they would call that hateful conduct because I'm criticizing, an obviously sleazy bunch of people who've taken over our government. Will I be, reprimanded for this? People have abused my rights this way for my entire adult life, and I always thought I was just unlucky. But it's becoming clear that this is how most people are. It's like they have a gene for totalitarianism. I grew up in a classic borderline Marxist liberal town, Croton-on-Hudson, and Peekskill next door was always, we were made to feel guilty because, they were just known as kind of a poor black community and back in the day, and always felt guilty about that. It's not until you actually live there that you realize, quote unquote racism has little to do with skin color, and that there are real issues and problems that never get addressed just because it's really hard to even have a conversation with it.
Terrified by the prospect of another day of bullying, last week, Lucas died by suicide. His father says he had tried to get the school to intercede, but they would not, at least not effectively. And so many in the district, look at the line of people who wanted to speak tonight, say they had similar experiences.
Look, and you didn't have 5 minutes. Look, I don't know how you can see. I don't know how.
So when I moved to Peekskill in 2001, I applied for a job with the Peekskill City Schools. Never even got a call back. But my neighbor, she was hired. She had a record, not just a record, but murdered her own 3-year-old, bludgeoned to death by her boyfriend, burst spleen. The only reason I Googled her name was because she had threatened to punch me down the stairs. I have that on tape. I never left my apartment without recording. I was constantly being threatened this way. And they would call the police and make the police think I had somehow instigated. It was hell. But the point is, even though I saw this newspaper article, I still went to the trouble of paying $25 and foiling for some, courts transcripts so I could, know for sure exactly what happened. Because I'm still even thinking, give her the benefit of the doubt. Because that's the kind of person I am. That's the kind of teacher I would have made. That's the kind of influence I might have had in a child's life if they had hired me. Whether it's a lunch lady or a substitute teacher. They never even called me back, but they hire someone who murdered her baby. Take a listen to this woman's grown daughter. The murder was in 1987, so it was a long time ago, but nevertheless, she's still threatening people, right? This is her daughter. She had like 3 kids after this one. And the neighbor who was a pimp in the apartment on the other side of me. And he's joking around about practicing his torture techniques on mice and winking at her that, it's about me. You have to be, live there to get that. But just listen for a second. It's just 22 seconds.
I don't like them. Oh, God.
Well, I do this. I'm taking practice so that it's not working live, motherfuckers. Get it? Let me know.
All right. Thank you.
Terminated.
Bryson, thank you. Well, police now have a person in custody this afternoon after an early morning double shooting in Peekskill. Gunfire erupted behind a building on South Street, and a man and woman were shot while sitting in a car.
I just found this old stuff that I made a website in like 2003. When I first moved here, I took all these pictures, set up like a restaurant hub, message boards, real estate links, all this stuff. It's actually 2002 or 2003 maybe. And I made all of these graphics, and I did it all for free. Sent them a link for it at like the Lou at VIP at the the management company. Their response was to threaten me $20 a day fine if I didn't get rid of my dog.
Lucas's father now just wants change.
I had nothing to lose. My son's gone. So the only what I want right now is some justice for another kids.
Parents all say that when they bring concerns about bullying to the attention of administrators, that nothing is done, that they are ignored. So it surprised no one tonight when so many parents and students spoke about bullying, and members of the Board of Education said nothing.
After 16 years of being gaslit by poor black neighbors, there wasn't even a word. I didn't know the word gaslighting until, a few years ago when everyone started using it, but...
She didn't want to give it to Alex because I'm black. She didn't want to give it to black people.
Did you really just say that? Did you just say I don't want to give it to you because you're black?
Who you talking to?
But I know who you are. Poor ass bitch. You couldn't even go to school, but put your ass out.
You're not going to know that the police officers...
In case I forget to stick the recordings I have of my neighbors saying things like, you sleep with your dog, you have sex with your dog. Dolores also, in the midst of this rant somewhere, says, that's what you keep your stupid ducking fucking dog for. You want me to get you a man? I'll go get you a man.
What you gonna do? I want to know. Your dog got to go. And if your dog don't go, you go.
Hey, what's up?
Some clergy members say criminals also have no respect for authority.
Nah, I see that pipe on his hip, and that's exciting me. That's why I see that pipe on his hip on King David. Let me see that pipe.
He thinks everything's a pipe. Yeah.
Don't you touch me, man. We're gonna have a problem. We're gonna have a problem. Oh, King David, what's the problem then, shorty?
Imagine the mayor of a city or town saying to you, I hope you have trouble sleeping.
I don't give a fuck. You can't call the cops for shit. You a crazy bitch. Get the fuck away from my door. Simple as that. There ain't shit to talk about. Get the fuck away from my door. You crazy bitch. Recording everything.
I don't want to give it to you because you're black. You were speaking to me.
Okay, so whatever you want to roll with it.
Now my white friends are finally seeing themselves.
Whatever they want to do, let yourself be gaslit and swallow your pride.
You kiss my black ass, you ugly bitch.
That's what it is. It's like you don't even want to talk to it. There's nothing, just get away from it. And it's totally understandable. And I'm just a flawed human being. And the idea that even my, white counterparts in Croton, if I tried to talk about this, they looked at me like I'm the lowlifes down on Bank Street or whatever, sounding like a racist. Like, no, I am allowed to talk about my life experience. And they didn't want to hear it. And now the idea that you are unable to freely try to express yourself in social media is just, it's beyond heartbreaking.
To really build a global grassroots movement to fight against the censorship industrial complex.
I've been thinking.
It's important to note that to support a woman's ability, not her government, but her, to make that decision does not require anyone to abandon their faith or their beliefs.
And I'll never forget this black man raising his hand and saying,
Bitch, don't you ever talk to a motherfucking pimp like that, bitch. Disrespect a motherfucking man. Man, check your bitch.
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free.
Yes.
And we will be.
And the Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent.
Thank you so much.
No, it's...
A small group of people control access to all relevant information, and the rest of us don't know. We're allowed to yap all we want about racism, but go ahead and talk about something that really matters and see what happens.
And we're on day 167 of girlhood.
Mr. Hollywood, I'm right here.
Let's zoom in on...
Nobody knows what's happening.
You're not going to know that the police officers...
Then you'll call the police, right?
If you wear that, I have been advised to call the police if you do not comply with my rules.
Not only was Ukraine and the FBI jointly seeking to censor users on Twitter, they were actually seeking user data as well. Talk about where this campaign came from and what kind of user data were they seeking on the people they had targeted.
And comparing it to the Ministry of Truth in the novel 1984. Can you clarify what exactly is this? What exactly will this Disinformation Governance Board do? Will it monitor American citizens?
Dan, I'm very pleased to do so.
If I planted a piece of information with a reporter, I would ordinarily then try to create an environment in which he could not check the information. I would go to the British ambassador and brief him on the disinformation I had just given the reporter. So when the reporter wanted to cross-check what I'd told him with, say, the British ambassador, New Zealand ambassador, or what have you, he would get false confirmation, the same message coming back at him, and he'd say, aha, I've got proof that Frank Snepp told me the truth, when in fact, what he'd gotten was simply an echo of what I'd given him in the first place.
And you haven't stood alone. And President Zelensky, you have made it clear that he is open to pursuing, well, let me put it this way, he's not open, but you're open to pursuing peace. He wanted to see the, Europe end up being divided.
Why is the American military shooting something
out of the sky over Canada?
Because it's part of NORAD. There is the NORAD is part of like it's a what you call a coalition, a consortium,
a pact of nations.
A pact,
Okay.
exactly. And so that's why we were able to do that. Again, we didn't do it on our own. We did it clearly in step with Canada.
The most dangerous terrorist threat to our homeland is white supremacy.
Right now, fewer than 6% of doctors in the U.S. identify as black or African American. That's despite the fact that the community makes up 12% of the country's total population, and that's raising concerns about the impact on public health.
Mr. Washington, can you quickly tell me what airspace requires an ADS-B transponder? Quickly, please.
Thank you for the question, Senator. Not sure I can answer that question right now.
So what are the 6 types of special use airspace that protect this national security that appear on FAA charts? Quickly, please.
Sorry, Senator, I cannot answer that question.
So what are the operational limitations of a pilot flying under basic med?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. I'm not a pilot.
Can you tell me what causes an aircraft to spin or to stall?
Again, Senator, I'm not a pilot.
So can you tell me what the minimum separation distance is for landing and departing airliners during the daytime, Mr. Washington?
I don't want to guess on that, Senator.
Research shows that when we have a more diverse physician workforce, there's more understanding and more trust between the patient and the doctor. If the doctor has an understanding of the patient's cultural experiences, cultural background, lived experiences, especially when it comes to racism or discrimination or other aspects of their life, that can help with that physician-patient relationship.
You have a governor from Tennessee has decided to go after drag shows. What sense does that make, to go after drag shows? The governor himself hasn't been able to, if you think about this particular issue, he hasn't been able to cite any examples, anything to show that drag shows in public spaces are a problem. These ridiculous policies aren't just unnecessary, they are dangerous. It's completely unacceptable for a governor to be moving in this way, to be with such a bill, and it is also unfortunate.
So is the binder now pro-kitty drag show? Like we just showed you? Is the Democratic National Convention going to open up with kitty drag shows? But by the way, the shows we just showed you are outside of the classroom, and parents are taking their own kids to these shows, so that's on them and the performers. But it's also happening in our school libraries too.
We see American white people are going crazy. They're resorting to violence.
This is literally what conservative white folks do when they don't get their way. They turn violent.
I don't think it's our responsibility to be tasked with destroying and dismantling the racial oppression that's against us. That's just saying we're more at fault than the white people who constructed this system and the white people who continue to practice institutional racism.
This country was built on the idea that white men had a particular kind of freedom and a particular kind of citizenship that only they have, that gives, from the slave catchers on, the right to inflict violence in the name of protecting property.
And regrettably, we have seen a rise in white supremacy.
Scrutiny at that. Take, for example, as you point out, that disgusting incident that happened in St. Louis yesterday outside the Globe building. In a video posted online, you see a guy by the name of Deshaun Thomas. He stands behind a homeless man sitting on the sidewalk, calmly loads his weapon and shoots him at point-blank range. Witnesses suggest that the pair may have been fighting outside of a Shell gas station up the block moments earlier. Thomas was arrested a short time later at a library, though it's unclear if he was out on probation at the time or if he has a long rap sheet, probably, but we'll have to wait and see.
And gotaways have been a challenge.
From the beginning, yeah.
From the beginning.
But that matches your numbers roughly?
I believe so.
Matches his numbers, which are absolutely staggering.
That number, those numbers of people who've been released in the first 3 months of 2021 and 2022, that's more than the population of Boston, Seattle, Denver, DC, Detroit, Baltimore, all released.
Race war. Whose team are you on? Black people or white people?
Is there a race war? Did I miss it?
The white people. The white people.
And the mayor is likening this commission to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that we saw in South Africa.
In recent weeks, South Africa has seen some of its worst violence since the apartheid era.
And comparing it to the Ministry of Truth in the novel 1984. Can you clarify what exactly is this? What exactly will this Disinformation Governance Board do? Will it monitor American citizens?
Dan, I'm very pleased to do so.
Exploiting people's fear and anxiety. What he's doing is he's possibly going to cause a civil war in this country. And I don't necessarily mean a violent one. That certainly can happen. Actually, I think we're in the middle of one right now where we can't agree on anything.
Nobody knows what's happening.
And we talk about race. We're going to dig in a little bit more deeper, really deep into that, all of it tonight. But I want to talk to you about the turmoil in the royal family.
A small group of people control access to all relevant information, and the rest of us don't know. We're allowed to yap all we want about racism, but go ahead and talk about something that really matters and see what happens.
You will never see me fly an American flag, let's be clear.
If you keep it up, they'll make you be quiet. Trust us. That's how they maintain control.
Feel safe to step in. And the mayor is likening this commission to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that we saw in South Africa.
The NYPD did update us on some numbers this morning. From January 10 till today, there's been a reported 22 Asian hate crimes so far this year. Comparing that to the same time last year when there was just 0.
The white people. The white people.
There are plenty of stories about everyday racism from the perspective of the Black experience.
Special ed class, you telling me that you was special ed when you was in high school? Motherfucker. And I know you went to school. Could you recognize this, your little special ed case?
It's not about race. It's not about race.
I know you fucking with the school. I ain't never told nobody about your state ass. But I know who you are. Horse ass bitch. You couldn't even go to school, but put your ass out.
Give black people their rights, or we will burn this country to ashes.
I mean, why couldn't they just take the stuff and just be done? Why do they have to burn? All my memories, all my children's photographs, everything is gone.
White, black, white, black, white, black.
In recent weeks, South Africa has seen some of its worst violence since the apartheid era.
Like, honestly, because we can't say it's politics. This is not politically affiliated to nobody, you know?
Just trying to make sense of it all, you know, that whole unit, all our albums, all our photo albums, all our kids' history, the drawings, paintings.
On behalf of the wickedness of your people, white people, for the evil that you have done.
This is what we need to do. Yes, boycott them. And especially and specifically, boycott their holidays. Listen, people. Now, I know your kids may be used to Christmas, but you can tell your children, you know, they can celebrate anytime they want. They can get gifts and toys or whatever anytime they want. They do not have to celebrate December 25th when the Europeans dictate for you to spend your money and go out and buy things so they can get rich off of your backs.
Calling everybody to the table, not being police-led, community-led, and coming up with solutions to some of the challenges that we're being met with.
The model for those solutions is already being used in Brooklyn.
So that all being said, why? And here's the thing, you need to ask yourself, why would you want to give your money to someone who hates you? Why would you give your money to someone who demeans and degrades you and who would go so far as to call the police and lie? And in fact, say that you put a gun on them or someone in your group put a gun on them so the police can come and shoot you?
She didn't want to give it to Allie because I'm black. She didn't want to give it to black people.
Did you really just say that? Did you just say I don't want to give it to you because you're black?
Who are you talking to? And coming up with solutions to some of the challenges that we're being met with.
But I know who you are. Horse-headed bitch. You couldn't even go to school and put your ass out.
Some clergy members say criminals also have no respect for authority.
You're not going to know that the police officers.
In case I forget to stick the recordings I have of my neighbors saying things like, you sleep with your dog, you have sex with your dog. Dolores also, in the midst of this rant somewhere, says, that's what you keep your stupid fucking dog for. You want me to get you a man? I'll go get you a man.
What you can do? I can do anything I want. Because her dog got to like me. So now I'm going to let her know you got to get rid of that mother. Okay? That's what I want to let her know. Your dog got to go. And if your dog don't go, you go.
Hey, what's up? Earlier this month, an NYPD lieutenant was caught fighting for his own life in a tense struggle with a suspect who tried to take his gun. The lieutenant was ultimately shot in his ankles. Some clergy members say criminals also have no respect for authority.
Nah, I see that pipe on his hip and that's exciting me. That's why I see that pipe on his hip on King David. Let me see that pipe.
He thinks everything's a pipe.
Yeah.
You touch me, man. We're gonna have a problem.
We're gonna have a problem. On King David, what's the problem then, shorty? On BD, what's the problem? Let me see that pipe.
Shorty.
If you touch me, we're gonna have a problem.
Oh, what? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Touch me and see what happens.
What pipe
I'm not touching you.
On BD, on King David, shorty. On BD, on King David. Let me see that pipe. Let me see that pipe, shorty. On BD, where that pipe at, shorty?
Imagine the mayor of a city or town saying to you, I hope you have trouble sleeping.
I don't give a fuck. You can't call the cops for shit. You a crazy bitch. Get the fuck away from my door. Simple as that. There ain't shit to talk about. Get the fuck away from my door. You a crazy bitch. Recording everything.
I don't want to give it to you because you're black. You were speaking to me. Okay, so whatever you want to roll with it.
Now my white friends are finally seeing themselves.
Whatever they want to do, let yourself be gaslit and swallow your pride.
You kiss my black ass, you ugly bitch.
Then you'll call the police, right?
If you wear that, I have been advised to call the police if you do not comply with my rules.
Well, it started out politically, but then after that, people just did it stupidly.
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free.
Yes.
And we will be.
And the Russians are dying.
It's the best money we've ever spent. Thank you so much.
No, it's...
A small group of people control access to all relevant information, and the rest of us don't know. We're allowed to yap all we want about racism, but go ahead and talk about something that really matters and see what happens.
And we're on day 167 of girlhood.
Mr. Hollywood, I'm right here. Let's zoom in on.
If you keep it up, they'll make you be quiet.
I had 2 cranial aneurysms, and they literally had to take the top of my head off. I mean, they take a saw and they cut your head off and go in to find the artery that is, one was leaking, the other that hadn't before it burst.
What advice would you give a college student who has struggled with stuttering since he was a young child?
You know, when I was a kid, I talk like that.
Does Joe Biden have some sort of, mental incapacity? I don't know, but they also give, elderly people in the retirement homes ice cream as well, and he seems to always eat ice cream, so they give him a lot of protocols. No, I'm serious, but they give him a lot of protocols as if he is an elderly patient. So I don't know.
Here's what drives the driver in the states that are affected.
This is my message from earth to come. On behalf of we...
A solid meeting with they make a very good point. Here's the deal.
Look, Master, you understand that there's been criticism of this. There's been criticism trying to compromise by your family's business relationship. Sir, Mr. President, there is
Give me a break, man.
Did you overreact?
We hold these truths to be self-evident.
All men and women created by you know the thing.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
Joe Biden's decline is taking center stage for all the world to see.
He will be 86 years old at the end of his second and last term.
Judge me on my merit, not on my age.
When Western tourists first started traveling in large numbers to the Soviet Union in the early 1970s, they found that many Russians had a completely warped understanding of the United States. They thought that Americans lived in grinding poverty, in a state of perpetual race war, and were desperate to flee to the freedom and prosperity of the Eastern Bloc. They thought this because that's what they had been told. They had no way to know otherwise.
Domestic violent extremism is our greatest threat right now. And regrettably, we have seen a rise in white supremacy.
The most dangerous terrorist threat to our homeland is white supremacy.
And tonight, in newly released 911 calls, we hear her say that she had an altercation with that mother's children, and then the mother came to her door.
Oh my God, this lady just tried to break down my door. I didn't know what to do with that. My God, and I just saw at the door.
The one sitting on the stairs hit my door so hard it was like practically coming off. I had to hold it back.
What you gonna do? I can do anything I want. Because her dog tried to bite me, so now I'm gonna let her know you got to get rid of that mother. Okay? That's what I want to let her know. Your dog got to go. And if your dog don't go, you go.
Police say Lawrence then fired a single shot through her locked front door, shooting that mother in the chest and killing her.
Domestic violent extremism is our greatest threat right now.
Don't, bitch! I will shove that thing so far down your motherfucking throat. You are lying. I never sold anything out of my apartment ever.
Oh, really?
No, I
Because I spent
I
the
sell
test.
pussy.
Because I spent
I
the
sell
test.
pussy.
And no emotional capacity to withstand how uncomfortable the conversation is. And that means Black people can't be their authentic selves with us.
I don't give a fuck. You can't call the cops for shit. You a crazy bitch. Get the fuck away from my door. Simple as that. They ain't shit to talk about. Get the fuck away from my door. You a crazy bitch. Recording everything.
With many left helpless by South Africa's failing economy and corrupt government.
A Brooklyn man could now face upgraded charges. The city's medical examiner has ruled the death of a 4-month-old girl a homicide. The mother of Royalty Camp says her boyfriend, Ricardo Price, beat her daughter while he was babysitting her. She says it happened after the infant interrupted Price when he was playing video games. City education officials.
2 robberies. This is surveillance video of one of the early morning robberies in Chelsea. In both incidents, the victims had just left restaurants and were walking down the street when a black Mercedes-Benz pulls up. Police say the suspects got out of the car and robbed their victims at gunpoint. They took several chains, necklaces, rings, and watches and then drove off. No one was hurt in either robbery. In Westchester County.
But what if you could just give us feedback on our inevitable and often unaware racist assumptions and
Dirty, poor white bitch.
Black people can't be their authentic selves with us.
Don't snap.
No, y'all calling the police. No. She gonna call them on me, because I'm already not gonna
and comparing it to the Ministry of Truth in the novel 1984. Can you clarify what exactly is this? What exactly will this Disinformation Governance Board do? Will it monitor American citizens?
Dan, I'm very pleased to do so. Dan, I'm very pleased to do so.
And I'll never forget this black man raising his hand and saying,
Bitch, don't you ever talk to a motherfucking cut like that. Bitch, disrespect a motherfucking man. Man, check your bitch before I stop.
and you know, just take that in. I just want all the white people to just take that in.
These graduation cheers interrupted by gunfire. And tonight, police have the alleged gunman in custody, 19-year-old Amari Pollard.
It's wrong that extreme officials are pushing hateful bills targeting transgender children, terrifying families, and criminalizing doctors. I was getting out of the car to go in the city hall, and there were these two well-dressed men standing in a corner. The light changed. They kissed each other and went in different directions. One went to the DuPont building, one went to the Hercules building. And I'd never seen that before. I looked at my dad. He looked back at me and said, "It's simple. They love each other. It's simple." And to me, it's that simple. It's that straightforward.
Whole team of my life. You ain't got the check now. It's giving bossy. Rick, hey, lay, shake it, shake.
These are our kids.
So medical affirmation begins when the patient says they're ready for it. So that could be a kiddo who is just starting puberty and panicking because they're getting breast buds or their penis is getting bigger and busier and they're worried about all kinds of masculine changes. And that way, puberty blockers, which are completely reversible and don't have permanent effects, are wonderful because we can put that pause on puberty. It's like if you were listening to music, you put the pause on and we stop the blockers and puberty would go right back to where it was. The next note in the song just delayed that period of time.
These are our neighbors.
What's the youngest patient that you've operated on?
The youngest patient I've done vaginoplasty on is age 16.
Do you worry that minors just don't understand enough about themselves? They're not neurologically developed enough yet to make permanent life-altering decisions?
Absolutely not.
It's cruel and it's callous. Not somebody else's kids, they're all our kids. It's wrong.
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free.
Yes.
And we will be.
And the Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent.
Thank you so much.
No, it's...
The Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent, Graham says.
A win for Ukraine is a win for all of us. And for them to sit there and say that this is a territorial dispute, that's just not the case. To say that we should stay neutral, it is in the best interest of America. It's in the best interest of our national security for Ukraine to win. We have to see this through.
So if you're wondering why our country seems so dysfunctional, this is a big part of the reason. Nobody knows what's happening.
Elected the highest ranking black Indian with Indian background woman in American history to be vice president.
Literally for a solid year, all degrading China.
Martin Luther King was about the biggest traitor to black people in modern day history.
And where do we stand now with the status of this report?
So what the Congressional Black Caucus is calling for now is for the FBI to set up a meeting between members of the CBC and the people that wrote the document.
If two black people killed a police officer, they would instantly become heroes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think because of the relationship that black people have had with police officers over the course of time. But I don't think of black people thinking
they
of
would
police
become
officers.
heroes, you said.
I thought so. That just instantly that's what I thought.
Because nobody can account for this. I mean, in my opinion, just to cut to the chase, I don't believe black identity extremists exists.
You
You know what it is. Let me tell you something, man. Let me tell you something. Bob Marley was considered great because the white man sold his records around the world.
Right.
Martin Luther King is considered great in America because the white man used integration to wipe us out as a people.
And I believe that the FBI should retract the document and should send out a document throughout law enforcement saying that black identity extremists do not exist.
They gonna burn this bitch to the ground, okay?
They gave no information to us as to how they came up with that category. And to me, what they really need to be concerned about is white identity extremists. But that seemed to mystify them.
Okay.
America allowed this to happen because these idiots, these Europeans have miseducated our people. Too black, too strong. Too black, too strong. Too black, too strong.
Are we hearing about BIE concerns from any local law enforcement or other agencies other than the Bureau?
No, I mean, basically, you know, that document cites organizations from many, many years ago, and it cites...
People, all power to the people. All power to the people. Too black, too strong. Too black, too strong. No more pigs in my community. Off the bed. No more pigs in my community. Off the bed. Revolution has come. Off the bed. No more sisters in jail. Off the bed. Pigs are going to catch hell. Off the bed. Oi, 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 oi. You rock the past and say freedom of death. And we mean it to the last breath. And we mean it to the last breath.
It's organizations from many, many years ago, and it cites the 3 or 4 incidences in which African Americans were involved in killing law enforcement officers. And ironically, the only individual that was connected to an organization was the guy that committed the murders in Baton Rouge, and he was connected to Sovereign Nation, which is a white organization.
After shots were fired, Wallace led officials on a 56-hour-long manhunt. He was eventually found hiding with guns in a treehouse in Georgia with ties to a pro-black paramilitary organization.
Condemn anti-Asian hate crimes. Bring us up to date on that bill.
Sure. Actually, this resolution was sponsored by me and then Senator Kamala Harris in the Senate.
Pretty much ends the violence at that moment. But look at just how disgusting this is to watch. The looting has gotten...
And I'm so excited that just last month, President Biden signed a new executive memorandum that contained many pieces of my legislation, like those mentioned.
But this shows the nefarious mindset of the Communist Party of China to take advantage of a worldwide crisis like COVID.
From a 77-year-old woman and dragging her to the ground.
And I feel your pain as a non-white person.
Basically condemning anti-Asian discrimination and violence. It also encouraged the federal government to collect more data on hate crimes so we could get a clearer picture of what was happening to and with the Asian community around the country.
So let me ask, because again, if the 5 officers were black,
because this is an outrage. And race still is involved, Joe, as you and I spoke about on the phone. Because I don't believe those 5 cops would have done that to a young white on a on a traffic stop. So when blacks engage in profiling, when whites engage in profiling, they need to not only be fired, they need to be prosecuted.
So, because again, if the 5 officers were black, race is still involved because the person who was beaten to death was black.
Quote, teenagers have been having fights, including fights involving knives, for eons. We do not need police to address these situations. By showing up to the scene and using a weapon against one of the teenagers, everyone should be frightened that the ruling white elite have done such a thoroughly successful job of not only disconnecting us from the means of basic self-sufficiency, but also convincing us we need armed white officers to manage our children and communities, end quote. You may roll your eyes at Ibrahim X. Kendi, or the president and vice president, or at Bree Newsom and the many like her. But be assured that the Biden administration does not roll its eyes. It takes every word very seriously, and that means your neighborhood may soon see reforms like this one.
An update now on an unprovoked brick attack in Manhattan. The victim, Lisa Kavanaugh, works at Governor Cuomo's New York City office. The 51-year-old was walking on 48th Street and 3rd Avenue on Thursday afternoon when police say a man came up from behind and hit her in the head with a brick. She is expected to be okay, but police arrested the suspect, 28-year-old Christopher Guzman, who has been charged with assault.
The brick was actually a cinder block, and there's video of the moment of impact that they don't use. They minimize these crimes, never mention the race, the fact that he's black, she's white. Not that they should, but if you compare that to Gail's obsession with Mia Ponsetto, the Soho Karen they call her, it's as if there is a deliberate policy, like some kind of policy in place where they minimize these truly violent crimes. I mean, where's the outcry? Or how is she doing? No one cares to know if she's still alive. It wasn't a brick. He, with his whole weight of his body, hit her in the head with a giant cinder block. He was black, she was white. Did he know she was from the governor's office? I mean, even a staffer at the governor's office isn't safe. And I don't think the governor realizes how many times this probably goes on, maybe unreported. Just because it's not in the news doesn't mean it didn't happen 10 or 20 times that day.
Max, though, says if these bicyclists are caught, he wants them to be punished, but he does not want them to serve jail time.
Of the Beamer, and the rage began.
They're ripping off the side mirrors. They're starting to try to bang the glass. They're ripping off the grill of the car.
Inside, his mother on the phone with 911, shaking and panicked.
What I heard was, help us, help us. They're going to kill us.
Just a few blocks away, investigators say the culprit smashed this cab's windows, even throwing a bike at the cabbie twice.
What's your best explanation from talking to the family, talking to others, on why these 5 police officers just beaten to death, literally beaten to death, simply for, as you said, driving while black, and yet the 5 officers were all black, and you talk about that too.
I think it is just to Tyree. I talked to his parents along with Attorney Ben Crump day before yesterday. Is that, first of all, what was it that they were pursuing him about? And they beat him like this. And then the fact that all 5 policemen, all 5 were black. And if we don't, and we being those in the civil rights community, cannot stand up and hold black cops to the same accountability and show the same outrage, then if they were white, then we are fighting white police brutality, not fighting police brutality. I've said to the family that I'm going to weigh in as heavily as I can with National Action Network. I've been invited to speak at the funeral at Mississippi Boulevard Baptist Church next Wednesday.
This would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. And we're looking at that very carefully. You think that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
Platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
White, black, white, black, white, black, white, black, white, black, white, black, white, black.
And if you are black in this country, police shootings is a pandemic because the rate of black deaths by shooting is larger than the rate of Americans' death from coronavirus.
If they think this is sour grapes, then they don't understand what's going on. Because if we don't look like the community we serve, how can that community trust us?
I wonder who he's named after.
That's a pandemic.
We have to be twice as careful as them, twice as smart, and never let them know what you think of them.
White people, for the evil that you have done.
And I feel your pain as a non-white person.
What percent of this country are white supremacists?
Say most of the country. I can't give you a number, but like...
I say majority of the country.
Yeah.
I don't want to say we need to go start killing all white folks, but it's like... But maybe they need to feel the pain and the hurt.
If two black people killed a police officer.
To sad news here in New York, a second New York City police officer has died of his wounds from a shooting in Harlem last week.
If the police could recognize that, look, black people call the police more than any other group.
Should we have dispensed the trials? We're not going to have a trial. Yeah. Let's just convict him right now. Yeah.
There shouldn't even be a trial. He should be convicted just as is.
After he and his partner were ambushed during a domestic disturbance call.
After they were called to a disturbance between a mother and son.
The attack is only the latest in a wave of violent incidents that have rattled New Yorkers and raised concerns about crime in the city.
If two black people killed a police officer, they would instantly become heroes.
Yeah. Thoughts and prayers with their families.
They would instantly become heroes.
Yeah. Turning to London and the growing pressure on Prime Minister Boris Johnson to resign.
While the bulletin emphasized small-scale attacks are unlikely.
Tonight, crisis on the border. The new numbers tonight as CBS News has learned just how many children are in U.S. custody after illegally crossing the border alone. The stunning admission from President Biden's Homeland Security chief. Illegal crossings are on pace to be the largest in 2 decades as Republicans blame the administration's rollback of Trump's strict policies. Tonight, we meet a 10-year-old.
He's 10. Anda solo. De Bolivia. Bolivia. He's by himself.
I just wonder, did it feel as reversed in that room as it looked to us on TV?
You captured it exactly. We were buoyant. We sensed a future. We sensed an agenda. We had a focus. We had a future for America. We were going forward. We were doing something new.
Because they are not to cause a loss of power. It may cause a disruption to critical infrastructure like hospitals and police departments. Homeland Security noted several indicators, including online chatter. While the report does not suggest an imminent threat, the Homeland Security Secretary has warned lone wolf actors and small bands of extremists are among the greatest domestic threat because they're hard to detect, disrupt, and can mobilize quickly, Gail.
All right, Catherine, got it. Vaccinating children. Moderna gives its COVID vaccine to kids as young as 6 months old in its first trial.
Because this is an outrage. And race still is involved, Joe, as you and I spoke about on the phone. Because I don't believe those 5 cops would have done that to a young white.
No. This result. That's the bottom line. America doesn't listen to us when we march peacefully. I'm not saying people will be back in the street, but America must know that if you continue to allow us to be murdered in the streets without justice, we will raise hell in America.
So it's that simple. Violence gets results. Now that's a threat, of course, but it's also unfortunately true. Rioting does work. When you burn cities, you get what you want. You get rich from corporate handouts. You can buy 4 homes. You get the jury verdicts you have demanded. Rioters know this very well, even if the rest of us will not admit it.
I can't do that, but I'm gonna shake your hand anyway. Come on, next officer.
Push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 And when he pushes talking points that are meant to flirt with and stoke white backlash, he does so in a coded way with dog whistles about education.
The racial animus that is teeming with the dog whistle messaging.
Racial language and dog whistles, quite frankly.
Some of it was dog whistle. Yeah. Right? Some of it was dog whistle racism.
Horrible racist dog whistles from the GOP.
Dog whistling on education. I think all the CRT stuff is trumped up dog whistling.
What rose to sort of the national conversation was the dog whistle.
Notice they keep referring to dog whistles, but they never even say what they're talking about.
And unifying America, a lunch counter that once kept people apart is now bringing everyone together.
When's the last time you've seen a mainstream media outlet do a serious investigative report
into the alleged assault against actor Jussie Smollett?
By allowing Wendy's to be torched and Macy's to be looted and police stations to be destroyed, the rest of us have relinquished our power as citizens and instead handed it to the most violent, unreasonable, and least productive people in the country. Why would we do something like this? Maybe historians will be able to explain it. In the meantime, prepare for the next phase.
So now what? Chauvin is headed to jail, but is America headed to justice? Is justice convicting a police officer? Or is justice convicting America? But the problem is structural. The problem is historic. Justice has convicted America. Now we must put in the time transforming this nation.
So we've all been convicted of murder. And by the way, you can't blame Ibrahim X. Kendi. That guy's gotten many millions of dollars from our captains of industry. He is incubated within the academy. You may be paying tuition to support his salary. Why are you doing that? Why are the rest of us doing it? As he calls for punishing you for a murder you didn't commit? So this transformation that Ibrahim X. Kendi is calling for, what exactly is that going to look like? What's the shape of the reform to come?
In a hallway with that student, suddenly picking him up, violently throwing him, not once, twice. Remarkably, that child is said to be in good health. As for that man right there, he's going to get...
talk about the loss of her son, and I've heard it far too often. And let's be clear, these problems are decades in the making. I say all over and over again, using the analogy, there are many rivers that are feeding the sea of violence in our city and in our country. And we have to dam each river. And we're doing our job in the New York City Police Department. We took over 1,000 guns off the street this year, almost 10 a day. You see what's happening in Chicago. Last year they took over 12,000 guns off the street. So it's a combination of intervention and prevention that I talk about all the time. We're doing our jobs on the ground. Our officers, my anti-gun unit, made over 130 something arrests. And the real troubling part, many of them are repeat offenders. We have witnessed before the increase in crime across the country, and the solution started in New York. We started the process of turning around the lack of safety nationally, and we're going to do it again. But you're right. Number one, when we put in place our dyslexia screening, it's unbelievable that 30% of inmates in our country are dyslexic. We have one high school on Staten Island to deal with dyslexia. We want to make sure we have it across the borough. Learning disabilities. 48% of the prisoners at Rikers Island have a learning disability. 80% don't have a high school diploma. Education is one of the feeders. We fail. 65% of black and brown children never reach proficiency in the city. So when you start correlating with the failing policies in the city, it feeds these crimes. And then the pandemic, the mental health issue after the pandemic is so real. I mean, when you have someone put human waste in someone's face, attack someone with a hammer, you're seeing the outcome of the failure of how we treated people during the pandemic, and we're seeing the results of that.
Well, Bree Newsom has some ideas. Newsom is one of the most famous BLM activists in the country. This morning, she announced that henceforth, police officers should not be allowed to break up knife fights.
I hope they stomp his ass.
The next video we see is from a stationary pole camera. You see officers throw Nichols to the ground. An officer appears to kick him in the head multiple times. From another body camera angle, you see officers pepper spray him as he cries for help.
You see the kid throws the poor kid's head into a wall, puts him grabbing his neck. He walks up, kicks him in the face. I mean, just savage, absolute animal kind of behavior.
Quote, Teenagers have been having fights, including fights involving knives, for eons. We do not need police to address these situations by showing up to the scene and using a weapon against one of the teenagers. Why? But the federal government keeps really good stats on this, so we know that a lot of these crimes are being committed by African Americans. African American men are more than 80 times more likely to commit crimes against Asians than Asians are to commit crimes against African Americans. So why is that? What explains that? Instead of asking that question, which seems like kind of an important question, the media are telling you, and their leaders are telling you, that
it's white supremacy.
This is just happening, and that's it. But it's happening a lot. This apparently racially motivated attack happened on Sunday in San Francisco.
Already on the ground, Mrs. Wren is kicked squarely in the face.
They used the fist to hit my head multiple times, and then they pulled me down to the ground and kept hitting me, kicking me.
The horror doesn't end there. When Mrs. Wren tries to hide in the hallway and is unable to close the door, the suspects return again, not to steal her watch or earrings, but her keys, and to take turns assaulting the terrified senior.
Beating up an old lady for no reason. Maybe there is reason. What's the reason? It's certainly happening a lot. In New York City, a career criminal called Anthony Evans just slashed a 59-year-old Asian woman with a box cutter as she was walking in Manhattan. You're seeing that footage right now on your screen. Evans has a criminal history that includes robbery and criminal possession of a weapon. But New York's leaders, who claim to care about stopping Asian hate, have decided not to charge Evans with a hate crime.
Tomball third grader whose family says he was beaten in a school bathroom until his brain bled.
Everyone should be frightened that the ruling white elite have done such a thoroughly successful job of not only disconnecting us from the means of basic self-sufficiency, but also convincing us we need armed white officers to manage our children and communities, end quote. Now, you may roll your eyes at Ibrahim X. Kendi, or the president and vice president, or at Bree Newsom and the many like her. But be assured that the Biden administration does not roll its eyes. It takes every word very seriously, and that means your neighborhood may soon see reforms like this one. And what will happen then? Well, if you live in an affluent neighborhood, you'll be absolutely fine because you'll hire private security. And there'll be many American police officers who are eager to become private security guards because it pays better and you don't have to listen to Ibrahim X. Kendi. He'll doubtless happen. But for everyone else, what next? Well, here's some data, and it comes from, of all places, the website Vox, which cites the following study. Quote, from 2014 to 2019, a researcher called Campbell tracked more than 1,600 BLM protests across the country, largely in bigger cities, with nearly 350,000 protesters. Now, the net result was, quote, roughly 300 fewer police homicides in census places that saw BLM protests. Okay, 300. But here's the cost of that, and we're quoting. Campbell's research also indicates that these protests correlate with a 10% increase in murders in the areas that saw BLM protests. That means from 2014 to 2019, there were somewhere between 1,000 and 6,000 more homicides that would have been expected if places with protests were on the same trend as places that did not have protests. You following the math there?
What do you make of what's happening as it relates to voter suppression?
I think that our great country could be on the brink of a civil war. We never really, in drafting the Constitution, ever thought about including people of color, Native Americans, anybody. It was an extension of the European culture.
So the United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. And it is an alliance that is strong and enduring.
That's why today's vote is so important. Congressmember Grace Meng's COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act would help improve our hate crime response by creating a new position at the U.S. Department of Justice to better track and address COVID-related hate crimes and incidents. And this also includes the text of the bill that I co-lead with Congressmember Don Beyer, and that's the Jabara Hire No Hate Act, which will improve hate crime reporting and provide resources for states to establish their own hate crime hotlines and resources for law enforcement to improve their hate crime response. So I want to once again thank Congressmember Grace Meng and Senator Mazie Hirono, who led the introduction of the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act.
The most dangerous terrorist threat to our homeland is white supremacy.
And tonight in newly released 911 calls, we hear her say that she had an altercation with that mother's children, and then the mother came to her door.
Oh my God, this lady just tried to break down my door. I didn't know what to do. I grabbed my gun and I saw at the door.
The one sitting on the stairs hit my door so hard it was like practically coming off. I had to hold it back.
What you gonna do? I can do anything I want. Because her dog tried to bite me. So now I'm gonna let her know you got to get rid of that mother. Okay? That's what I want to let her know. The dog got to go. And if your dog don't go, you go.
Police say Lawrence then fired a single shot through her locked front door, shooting that mother in the chest and killing her.
Domestic violent extremism is our greatest threat right now. And regrettably, we have seen a rise in white supremacy.
Waste my time.
Why don't you kiss my ass?
And because I thought you were a friend.
I hope you kill yourself and die slowly. Yeah. Now tweet that.